consequences. Poor connection of cables responsible for the fire incident yesterday which occurred at Marché Central. We take you to the market one day after the fatal incident. And also, we remember the 6th of April 1984 abortive coup in Cameroon, 31 euros after. What has changed? We shall be right back with the details. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome back from the weekend. This is the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinox Television. Let's begin right away with a rather sad story in the west region of the country where the lifeless body of a man was found yesterday morning lying on the street of Bagante, that's in the west region of Cameroon. The victim is a retired teacher and he is said to have died while carrying on his usual keep fit exercise. The cause of his death up to now remains unknown, as Jacques Ekwekinge tells us in the following report.
It was a sad Easter Sunday morning for some inhabitants of the town of Bangante who got up at about 7 a.m. just to discover the lifeless body of a man lying on the street. According to allegation, the late man, whose names we got as Ndumfak Francois, a retired teacher, was on his routine morning sport that Sunday morning. According to witnesses, he had allegedly suffered from malaise, which led to his sudden death.
Au cours de son sport, il a eu un malaise, paraît-il, et on l'a retrouvé mort à 6h30.
Informed of the situation, the senior divisional officer for the Ndé Division, Ebele Samuel Ernest, accompanied by the forces of law and order and some other administrative authorities, visited the scene of the incident, where many onlookers had already gathered, pondering on what must have happened to the victim. Alerted, the indigents of Bafu in the Day Division, of which the late Ndumfak Francois originates, immediately mobilized, and the corpse was transported to the morgue of the Bangante Hospital.
That is Jacques Ekwekinge. They're reporting our sincere apologies on the poor quality of that report. Now, scores of traders at the Douala Central Market here in the littoral region are still suffering the consequences of yesterday's fire incident. The flames reduced the content of 2 shops to ashes, according to reports. It took hours for firefighters as well as traders to put out the flames, and this isn't the first time it is happening at the same market. And it should be noted that scores of other traders that were affected by previous fire incidents which occurred at Marché Central are still awaiting to be resettled by the government or the government delegate to the Douala City Council. Now, the anarchical connection of cables at the Douala Central Market is seen as a principal cause of fire outbreaks in the market as well as other markets here in the economic capital, Douala. However, market officials have warned against lighted cigarette tubes, explosion of gas bottles, as well as electrified irons and other appliances. And this is coming barely one day after the fire incident which ravished 2 shops yesterday. For Hansen Chanji went to the market and compiled the following report.
When one talks of market in the metropolitan city of Douala, what comes to mind is the numerous fire outbreaks that have led to losses of goods. The recent fire outbreak Sunday at the Douala Central Market is the latest of such incidents. Far from being the normal faulty electrical connections, an electronic appliance was forgotten in one of the shops that caused the disaster. But poor or faulty electrical connections cannot escape the blame. At the Douala Central Market, traders are used to seeing cables on the wall connected in a haphazard manner. Scotches are used in some cases to connect the cables. Butchers told us this could be very dangerous because when a fire outbreak is announced, the distribution point may be meters away from them. Officials at the Central Market are aware of this problem and have given a contract to connect all the cables to a company. We are told that this company has made barely 6 months. They have a daunting task to go round the market to reconnect all the cables. We are even told that local residents at the Douala Central Market are given electricity from the market. Faulty electrical connections lack of water at the market, inability of existing security are some of the factors that predispose the market to a fire outbreak. These factors are paid less attention by the Douala City Council, which is often seen when it concerns amount traders have to pay per stall, leading to a tussle between traders and the City Council. Sunday, it was 3 shops. If nothing is done to remedy this situation of haphazard connection of cables, another catastrophe may be looming.
And the 6th of April is a remarkable day in the history of Cameroon. It was this same day, 1984, that an aborted coup was staged in the nation's capital. Perpetrators of the April 6, 1984 event were planning to take over the presidential palace, the radio, as well as the airport. 90 people lost their lives during the failed coup, and the aftermath of the incident unmeasurable. 31 years after the incident, the government has remained silent on what actually happened on that day. And those were the images of an ex-military official in the nation's capital, Yaoundé, who witnessed the event which took place on the 6th of April 1984. He recounted to Roland Akong just how it happened. His report.
30 years ago, April 6, 1984, a segment of Cameroon armed forces took arms in an attempt to topple President Biya. Biloa Aïssi, an ex-commissioner of police, witnessed the April coup d'État.
Et le 6 avril, effectivement, les militaires de la garde présidentielle, ça s'appelait la garde républicaine à l'époque, ont pris les armes pour prendre le pouvoir.
He says President Biya was not toppled because he was assisted by 7 close security staff led by Major General Ivo de Sancio, the director of presidential security.
C'est Ivo qui prend sur lui de descendre tout ce qui était pour le coup d'État.
He says the residences of General Pierre Semenge and other officials were bombed by the rebels, and that the rebels arrested René Claude Maker, who was the then director of presidential security, and Martin Bangangele, among other senior officials.
Qui sont venus avec un char tiré sur la résidence du général Semenge. Nous étions derrière, le commissaire Bangangele chez lui, et le général Meka, qui était colonel à cette époque, a été surpris chez lui.
L'armée nationale vient de libérer le peuple camerounais de la bande à Biya.
The ex-commissioner of police adds that the victory message of the rebels did not go through the waves, that it was heard only in Yaoundé, because a technician disconnected transmission cables at the Soir High Waves station.
Qui demande à son chauffeur d'aller couper les émetteurs à Soir.
The culprits of the coup d'etat were executed around Balmayou and were all buried in 3 mass graves. Most detainees regained their freedom after a December 1991 amnesty law. The ex-commissioner of police says the emergence of tribalism and the emergence of citizens developing networks, relationships to be part of the governing clan is one of the biggest consequences of the April 6, 1984 coup d'etat.
Roland Akong there, taking us back to the 6th of April 1984 with an ex-military official based in the nation's capital. Now, in news out of Cameroon, a military spokesperson has said that Kenya fighter jet has bombed positions of militant Islamist group Al-Shabaab in neighboring Somalia. The warplanes reportedly targeted 2 camps used by Al-Shabaab. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has vowed to continue the country's engagement against Al-Shabaab, and the attack on Al-Shabaab, it should be noted, is Kenya's first response to the last week assault at the Garissa University, which left 148 people dead. Still out of Cameroon, Kenyans have been left to suffer the consequences of the attack that was last week, which left dozens of people alone days after the incident. International support and messages of condolences still a far-fetched idea. Solidarity amongst Africans themselves is equally absent. A reporter for Hansen Chanji reports or tells us that international support usually takes a political undertone. His report.
When terrorists attacked the French-based news magazine Charlie Hebdo on January 7, 2015, There was an unprecedented mobilization worldwide, with leaders condemning the act. The Kwachi brothers were reportedly gunned down within 48 hours. Thousands of persons gathered in various French cities using the slogan "Je suis Charlie," now common and used worldwide as a sign of solidarity against the attack. Some African presidents took part, while others sent messages of condolence. Africans themselves had on their pages on social media, "Je suis Charlie Hebdo." But when it comes to an African country affected, the whole world goes mute. Africans are not in solidarity with one another. The latest killings in Kenya, 148 students of Garissa College, has come to prove that where there is no interest, there is no action. Kenyans have been left to lick their wounds. A demonstration against the Al-Shabaab attack has passed unnoticed. World leaders are yet to comment. Only Pope Francis denounced in his Easter Sunday message the killings of Christians by Muslims. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his people are carrying their cross. The United Nations, the African Union, the United States, Germany, and even France are yet to comment. African presidents are yet to react. There have been many events on the African continent that merit well attention, but underlooked. It took President Paul Biya of Cameroon many months to receive support against Boko Haram after his famous Menace Global, Repose Global. Today it is Kenya. Tomorrow, who next?
Now we talk sports football. Morocco would now be able to participate in the 2017 as well as the 2019 African Cup of Nations tournaments after a ban by the CAF, or the African Confederation, or the CAF rather, was uplifted. The Court of Arbitration for Sports overturned CAF's ruling and reduced the fine imposed on Morocco from $1 million to $500,000. CAF has, however, ordered Morocco to pay 8 million euros as damages, and CAF claimed it suffered a lot of loss because of relocation of the African Cup of Nations finals from Morocco to Equatorial Guinea in just 2 months before the start of the event. Morocco cited Ebola outbreak as main factor for not being able to host the tournament immediately. Now, still in sports, a new member or 2 new members will be elected as Africa's representatives on FIFA's executive committee. CAF is to choose its candidates for the 25-man cabinet of FIFA. That's going to be tomorrow, Tuesday. Tarek Bashumwai of Tunisia, as well as Omari Selemani of the Democratic Republic of Congo, are most likely to be selected on the list of CAF. Bringing us to the end of this first segment of the news. Up next is Talking Point. Thank you for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We are going to be talking about the attack on the Kenyan soil, the worst in the history of Kenya. According to a report now, Kenyans are still mourning for the close to 150 people who were killed in the attack last week by Al-Shabaab. That was precisely in the Garissa University. It was also few hours ago that the Kenyan military spokesperson admitted that 2 camps used by Al-Shabaab were equally bombed. Tonight we are going to be having as guest an expert in conflict resolution, Mr. Nzi and Nelson. We thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Thank you very much.
And just to know that you are equally a peace ambassador from Academy of Universal Global Peace, based in India and having a headquarter in Cameroon for the African continent.
Exactly.
We thank you so much for joining. Now, this attack was not the first one in Kenya, but it's the worst attack so far on Kenyan soil for decades.
Yes.
What's your reaction as far as the attack is concerned?
Yes, in 17 years it was the worst. It claimed the highest number of lives, and it's a shame we have that on the African continent. Well, from my domain, I look at the causes, not just the consequences, and preventive measures to conflict resolution. It starts from somewhere inside, within the mind of an individual, and when we cannot resist what we have from inside, we demonstrate it outside. That's
Looking at the reaction of the Kenyan president, who is promising tough times for the Al-Shabaab militants. Do you think it's a positive response for such an attack against Kenya?
In conflict resolution, you must understand the use of force is the last option. For example, eliminating the weapons in the field and the people that committed these acts will not eliminate their ideology. It stays, it lives on, which means militants after them can pick up the same ideology and live on with it. It is just one way of trying to resolve it, but there are better ways, like a more effective communication, like education. We must get to eliminate this idea from their minds. For example,
from the minds of the terrorists?
From the minds of the terrorists.
How do we do that? Do you think it's possible?
Yeah, it's possible. You know, when you read the history of Al-Shabaab, it all started from the ideas of Osama bin Laden. If someone could school these people with appropriate knowledge from a basic age, you would understand that it will be difficult to get them involved in this. For example, the meaning of the word Al-Shabaab itself means the youths. Why do they target the minds of the youths? They are the future of tomorrow. They have tender minds that can be influenced to believing anything, and they read portions of some half-truths to them and make them believe it without giving them exposure to the whole truth. If these people, these militants, could be exposed to better global knowledge and keep away their inferiority complex.
What do you mean by better global knowledge?
For example, knowing we all originated from one source, we are one human being, you stand there for me, I'm there for you. That is the knowledge. These people feel like the world owes them something, and then they want to get it from the world. If we could reverse the idea to be like they owe the world something, they would probably give something better.
So what happens when most of Al-Shabaab's recruits are from Kenya, from the Kenyan soil itself, or from Somalia? So what happens to some of these youths?
Well, it's also it's also on the news that they have recruits from the United States of America. Yes, but for example, if you can look detailedly at the recruits for Al-Shabaab in Kenya, even in Somalia, they come from some of the least privileged families of the areas and some of the least educated. To see that if they were enlightened, because I don't know if Al-Shabaab can recruit you and you will accept that easily.
Could that possibly be the reason why it's so difficult to contain Al-Shabaab in Kenya?
Certainly, when
because maybe the leaders are not understanding the better approach to be able to contain the group. Could that possibly be the problem?
Yes, we talk about conflict resolution, we talk about preventive measures, for example. Resolving a conflict is more difficult than preventing it. Prevention is better than cure, we always say. As it is now, like the use of force is one of the last options they have. It has already escalated into conflict. It's already a conflict now. Whereas if it was resolved earlier, it wouldn't be what it is now. Like it is now, it takes experts. We need things like diplomacy to come to a resolution with this.
What about the fight against, it also reminds me of the fight against Boko Haram, that it's involving the entire continent. When I'm talking about the continent, I'm talking about countries like Chad, we have Cameroon, we have Nigeria as well. Do you mean to say that the manner of approach by some of these countries that are affected by terrorism is not the best? Do you think that is not the best approach because the consequences still abound? We still hear cases of attacks on a daily basis. The case of those that have been kidnapped so far. Remember the story of the hundreds of schoolgirls in Nigeria that their whereabouts up to now remains unknown. The story does not change, but the battle against Boko Haram continues. Is the problem at the level of approach?
Okay, for example, with the international community, we realize that these cases are not that wild or not that recurrent, not that frequent. I would like to say that the life of a country, a people, a race is not the lifetime, for example, of an individual. To fight a cause like this, it goes perhaps over a longer lifetime, a longer period than this. So, looking at, for example, we can take the case of the Boko Haram. It comes from one of the most remote areas of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So if we could institute free education and make it compulsory for all the people in that area of the country, we will realize that perhaps not solving the problem at hand, in maybe the next 50 years, we would have eliminated all the ideas about fighting against your brothers in the same geographical territory. Because if we take the case of the Boko Haram, suppressing them doesn't mean we have suppressed their ideas or just letting them calm down. They still have the weapons they do, which means the time comes when some leader takes over again and wants to use the very weapons or use the very means to get the very weapons, which means the problem has not been solved. If we can change their minds through effective communication, I say, complementation, solidarity, diplomacy, we will definitely.
Does this policy of diplomacy and communication, does it have its place when we already are in the face of the last option, like you earlier indicated?
Yeah.
We're already fighting against terrorism. Does it have a place? Communication, does it have a place?
Yes, like in many cases in Africa, you hear of the Desmond Tutus. It has its place. For example, you want to know why they are fighting. They have a reason. Someone needs to listen to them, and then someone needs to make sacrifices at this stage. You lose something, I lose something. We come to a compromise where it's a win-win situation. We need peace ambassadors, diplomats on the field to communicate with these people. I think all terrorist groups do understand the need to send a message to someone, sit on a table and talk together to resolve it.
So you think that the solution is dialogue?
Yeah, dialogue, that's one of the solutions.
We see dozens of lives involved in the incident which took place in Kenya. That was last week, but very insignificant, I should say, according to observers, solidarity from other Africans themselves. How do you interpret that? This attitude of Africans, their reaction as far as what is happening in other neighboring countries is concerned. What do you have to say about that?
You know, personally, a life lost is still a life. Whether it was lost by a malaria attack, a terrorist attack, it's the same thing, but these are extreme cases that need the immediate reaction of all African countries. We are one big Africa, one strong Africa. If only we could be a little more selfless and stand for others, these wouldn't be causes to fight for this long. For example, the Chadian army, the Cameroonian army, standing for Nigeria, of course, other countries, but a little too late.
When you talk of standing together, does it mean helping Kenya fight against terrorism, or just showing the solidarity for mere solidarity's sake?
No, showing the solidarity in the first place for mere solidarity's sake, as you put it, will mean a lot of things. Putting people in the background to try to communicate, to give education, orientate the minds of the youth, and improve their lives, change the economy of such environments, because a child who has barely seen 50,000 francs his whole life, being offered, for example, 500,000 francs to fight for 1 week, is good enough. They can take that chance. So it involves a lot. For the President of the United States, for example, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to stand and say, I support you, or just to give condolences, it means they are putting a lot of things in the background to make sure these are either eliminated or never happen again.
And talking about this reaction from other countries like the United States of America, France, and many other countries in the West, we see African leaders showing their solidarity more to Western countries,
yeah,
rather than their African counterparts. We saw what happened in France, that was a few weeks or months ago, how many Africans had to mobilize just to stand behind France to honor those who died as a result of the attack which took place in France. So can't we have, what is stopping Africans from having this spirit of solidarity amongst themselves? Is it a matter of interest, as many observers say?
Not just necessarily a matter of interest. What happened is actually very significant when African presidents would go to France. in times of need, in times of trouble like that. But you must understand, they are sending a message across. We are one world. If Africa could be there for France, they can be there for Africa. When you break it down to the very unit, the smallest unit, you will find that even those attacked in the same country, we should have some sort of support within the same country. So standing more for the Western world is not the issue. It's about being there for another human being. We are all human beings. A life lost in the United States, in France, is the same life lost in Tabiken, anywhere in the world. So we are just one human being. That's the message of peace, because one day we can attain the level of universal peace.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dean Nelson, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We hope to have you some other time again.
Thank you.
Just to tell our televiewers that he is an expert in conflict resolution. We thank you so much as well for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. Until we meet again, goodbye.